Hi sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name is Beth, and if you're new, welcome. This quilt and my daughter's bed started about 3 years ago here on this channel. I made a video called The Easiest Christmas Quilt, and the quilt top has been sitting for 3 years, and this week I pulled it out. I added a little bit of a border to make it large enough for the bed, and I'm going to take you along on that little journey of finishing this quilt top. First, I pulled out my roll of batting, and my quilt top is folded in half so that I can see that it will fit long ways there, and then I will leave that batting folded and I'll cut along the edge, leaving 2 or 3 inches excess, about 2 inches for when I open it up and get my quilt sandwich made. I had this older cotton fabric that was given to me this year, I think. A nice big piece that's just perfect for this quilt, and this will be the backing of my quilt. So I cut it in half, and I had to sew the sides together so that it would be the right size for the back of my quilt. I have these portable tables in my sewing room. I actually just have one right now, and it's great because I can move it around. And I cleaned it off, and that's what I'm going to use today to get my quilt sandwich made using the 505 spray adhesive. And I spray it on the batting, and then I smooth the quilt top on top. Sometimes I start in the middle of the quilt. This time I'm starting on one side of the quilt. This is a pretty big quilt. I'm not looking forward to the quilting because it's going to be kind of a challenge because it is so big. It's almost queen size. Turned the quilt over, and now I'm adding the backing in the same way that I did the front. I'll be spraying the batting and smoothing the backing fabric right on top. I'm going to sit down at my machine now. It's 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'm kind of curious how long it will take me to quilt this large quilt. I'll start somewhere in the middle in one of the squares, and then I'll just move down through the quilt top, sort of in an all-over loop-de-loop design. I finished all of the quilt blocks, just moving through sort of in columns, and then I checked the quilting, the backing, making sure I didn't have any problems there, and now I'm going to quilt along all the borders in a similar quilting design. When I was all done, it was almost 4:30, and I was able to work at pretty steady without interruption. Most of the time, though, I will say when I'm quilting, I do not time myself, and there are quite a few interruptions. So after everything was done, I went along all the way around the outside of my quilt and trimmed away the excess batting and backing. I'll be binding my quilt with some strips that are 2.5 inches wide, and I tried to use a lot of that leftover backing fabric that I had trimmed away. If it was large enough, if it was 2.5 inches, I was able to include it in this group of strips. They're not all the same fabric, but they are all very similar in color and contrast here, just very creamy fabric, and I sewed them all together to make a long strip long enough to go all the way around my quilt. I'll be attaching the binding after I pressed it in half. I'm going to attach it to the back of my quilt, leaving about 10 to 12 inches there of a tail, starting on one of the sides of my quilt. Got close to the corner, I stopped a 1/4 inch away, and I pivoted and sewed a seam off of the corner of the quilt, and I'll turn my quilt top and fold up and down right there on that corner, and then I'll start sewing right on the top of that fold, and I'll do that all the way around. After going all the way around my quilt, I stopped about 14 inches from where I started. So now I have 2 tails of binding, and I will fold one, and then I will cut the one there on the top right there on the fold. I just need at least 2.5 inches on that folded side. After I cut that excess off, I'm going to open it up and lay it right on that fold and cut 2.5 inches away from the fold. So I'll use this as my measurement. It's handy. I could use a ruler, but I always just use the little leftover binding there. So now that I know it's exactly 2.5 inches longer than I need, and I put these 2 ends together, right sides together, and I join them with the diagonal seam, just like I did when I was joining that long piece of binding together. After I sew those two ends together, I always double check and make sure that it's going to fit on the side of my quilt correctly, and then I can trim away the excess triangles. I'll pin this down and then I'll finish sewing the binding on. I turned my quilt over and I just rolled the binding over to the front. I did not pin. I rarely pin the binding. It always seems to work out, and I just get to miss a step there and save a little bit of time. So I'm going to top stitch all the way around my quilt. When I was done adding the binding to my new Christmas quilt, I took off the quilt in my daughter's room, the Pink Stars quilt along that we did a while back. I took that Pink Stars quilt off and I put that Christmas quilt on the bed. This is so pretty and it is such a simple design. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.